Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today in this video, I'll be discussing about one of the most widely used and powerful design patterns in software development. That is observer design pattern. Ever wondered how your social media feed updates instantly when somebody likes your post? Or how stock market apps push real-time price updates? That's the observer design pattern in action, silently working behind the scene to keep everything in sync. In this video, I'll break down in a simple or visual way whether you are a beginner or brushing up for an interview. You will walk away with clear understanding of what observer design pattern is and how to implement it. So are you ready? Let's get started. You can see my screen about the observer design pattern. So let me tell you the flow of the video, how it is going to be. First I'll discuss about the definition of observer design pattern, and then I'll discuss about key components in observer design patterns. Then I'll discuss about the class diagram. In the end, I'll discuss about a weather station app where I'll be discussing about how to implement the observer design patterns. So let's say I have a scenario where I have to notify so many people when there is some change in the state. So in that case, observer design patterns can be implemented. So in simple word, if I say what observer design pattern is, it's like a subscribe and notify. So whenever there is a change in the state of the object, so whoever has subscribed, that should get the notification. So in simple words, it's just like a subscription and notifications. Now let's move on to the key component of the observer design pattern. So basically, what are the key components that plays important role when we are going to implement this observer design pattern? So the first component in the observer design pattern is subject. So this subject, and then we have a observers. So these two play major role, and then we have a concrete subject and concrete observer. So these are the four key components that plays when we implement this observer design patterns, and I will be also showing you in the end when I design weather station app, like how to define a subject and how to define a observer and how to implement this subject. So how to create a concrete subject and how to create a concrete observer. So basically, concrete subject and concrete observer is nothing but the implementation of subject and observer. So that we'll be seeing in a while. So these are the main four components that comes into the picture when I talk about observer design patterns. So now let's move on to the next, where I'll discuss about each one of these key components, like what is the role of each components in the observer design patterns. So when I talk about subjects, subject is nothing but it maintains the list of all the observers, and it also provides method for register and unregister observers and to notify observers of the changes in its state. So basically it gives all the methods for adding a new observer, removing a new observer, and it also has that method for notification, like when there is a change in the state, like who will be notified. So these three are part of the subject that we will be seeing in later part of the video, where I'll be defining these methods and the list of observers. Here is just that theory. So let's move to the next, observers. So observer is nothing but it's just an interface with update method that concrete observers must implement, as I explained in the key component also, right? Concrete subject and concrete observer are nothing but that implementation of the subject and the observer. So observers has one method called update, and that method has to be implemented by the concrete observers. So let's move to the third key component, which is concrete subject. So concrete subject is nothing but the implementation of the subject. So all the method which are defined in the subject needs to have their implementation implemented in the concrete subject. So let's say if I give you an example, we are build since I'm talking about building a weather station, so I have taken example here for the weather station. If weather station is the subject, then a specific weather station in a different location would be the concrete subject. So this is all about the concrete subject. Now let's move to the concrete observer. So concrete observer is nothing but that it gives the implementation of the observer interface. Observer observer interface will have that update method, and concrete observer will have that implementation of the update method. So this is all about each of the key component. Now let's move to the class diagram. So let's say if we want to represent this observer design pattern in a visual way, how can we implement this? So here are the class diagram for the observer design pattern. So here you see we have a subject, we have a observer, then we have a concrete subject, and then we have a concrete observer. So this we already have discussed, like these are the four key components in the observer design pattern. And let's see here like how we are going to implement. This will give you the better picture when we implement this observer design pattern. So first we have a subject which you can see on my screen. So this subject is a interface, and it has three methods. So one method is add observer, remove observer, and notify observer. And then if you go to below weather station is a class, and it has implementation of the above subject. So if you see here we have a list of observers, and then the weather as a string, and then we have these three methods, add observer, remove observer, and notify observer. So this weather station class will give that implementation for the these methods. So this is nothing but this is concrete class, and the above one is the subject. Now let's come to the observer. So now we have observer is also an interface which has update method, and it takes one argument called weather. So this is observer, and then we will have this concrete observer. So concrete observer, here I have taken two, one is phone display and one is TV display, and this also gives that implementation of update method, and has one variable called weather and one method display. So this is how we will be representing in a class diagram for the observer design pattern. And tomorrow, let's say you want to extend with some other display, here you can create another display. Let's say I'll just XYZ, and we'll have this same like update method and display method. So without changing your code, you can extend your code also in case of observer design pattern. So this is another advantage of using this observer design pattern. So here the idea about the weather station is that, let's say there is any change in the weather, it should notify to the all the displays. So here I have taken two display, one is phone display, one is TV display. So when there is a change in the weather state, it should notify to all the observers. So this we will be seeing in a while how to implement in a code also. This I was just discussing about the class diagram. So I hope that this is clear. If it is not clear, let me know in the comment section. Now let's move on to the designing a weather station, where I'll be talking about the code, and then I'll also run this code and see whether it is working as expected or not. So as I have discussed in the theory, now we'll see in the code like how we are going to actually implement this observer design pattern. So here I have taken a weather station. So I will be designing a weather station here with the help of this observer design pattern. So let's get started. So first I have already explained this thing in the theory in key components and the class diagram. Now we are just implementing what we have explained in the so far. So watch the video till end so that you don't miss this complete implementation. So here I have a subject called interface. So I have defined a interface subject where we have three method: add observer, remove observer, and notify observer. Add observer and remove observer takes one argument of observer type, and then we have this observer which has update method that takes one argument of string type. So this is nothing but the subject. So this is subject, first key component. This is observer, second key component. Now we'll see concrete subject and concrete observer. So this is nothing but this is concrete subject, which will implement the subject. So you see this is weather station implement this subject, and here you see we have this list of observers and a argument of string type weather, and then here we are giving this implementation of the add observer method which was defined here in the subject. So weather station will give that implementation for all the method because it is implementing subject, and subject has these three methods. So here we are giving that implementation for all the three methods. So first I talked about the add observer where we are adding this observer which is passed as argument, then we are removing this observer in the remove observer, and then the last is notify observer, so where we are notifying to all the observers. So this will have that list of observers which will be storing here as a part of list. So you can see that here I am maintaining a list of all the observers, this list, array list. So since there will be more than one observers, we need to iterate it, and then we need to call this update method for each observer. So this is the notify observers, and here we have a set weather. So if there is a change in the weather state, we are just updating the weather variable with the new weather data, and then we are calling this notify observer methods. So this was the concrete subject class which has implementation for all the method which are defined in the subject. So now let's move to the concrete observer. So we have two observers here. So one is phone display and one is TV display. So these two class will implement this observer, and observer has a update method. So here we will be giving the implementation for the update method. So you see update method has the implementation, it's updating this weather data and calling this display method. So and display method is nothing but it is displaying that weather data, whatever change has happened in the weather state that will be displayed in the display method. So this is one of the observer. Now next observer is TV display. Here also doing the same thing, since it is implementing observer interface, it will give that implementation for the update method and calling this display method which display the weather state in the TV display. So these are the two observer where we are displaying that weather state. Let's say tomorrow we have other requirement where we want to display in the tab. So you can have another class called tab display which will implement this observer design pattern, will give this update method implementation and display method implementation. So this will, this code is loosely coupled and this can be extended with the new requirement without having any change in the existing functionality. So this is how like observer design pattern play a major role in solving the problem like this, where we have a multiple uh, observers who needs to be notified. So if the scenario is like this, we can use this observer design pattern. Driving code where I have the main method, and we see how we update all the observers when the state of the weather is changed. So here see I'm creating an object of the weather station, and then we are creating the object for the all the observers. One is phone display, another is TV display, and then we are adding this observer to the weather station object because weather station has this add observer method. And then weather station has this set weather method where we are defining this, the state of the weather has changed sunny. So when we run this method, it should notify this phone display and TV display, that I'll be showing you when I run the code. So this was just that discussion about the code, how I have designed this weather station. If you have any doubt or anything which you have not understood, you can let me know in the comment section. So before I jump into the code, I just want to conclude like what I have discussed in this video. So first I discuss about the what is observer design pattern and definition of observer design pattern. I discussed about definition of observer design pattern. Then I discuss about the key component. Then third I discuss about the class diagram. and fourth I discuss about the code implementation, basically implementation observer design pattern, observer design pattern. So these are the four things which I discussed. Now let's move to the code. So I'll just move to the IDE IntelliJ, where you can see that I have already written the code so that video does not become so long. I'll just discuss, since I've already discussed the code in the theory here. I'll just go through the code and run the program and see whether it is notifying when the state of the weather is changed or not. So once I'll just go through, I have here, you see, this is the subject method which has this three method: add observer, remove observer, and notify observer. And then we have this observer interface which has update method which is taking one argument, and then concrete subject which implements the subject which has that list of observer. And now let's see, we have this concrete subject class weather station which implements subject, and it has list of observers which will maintain the list of all the observers, and variable called weather which will have the data when there is a change in the weather. So here we are giving implementation for the add observer, remove observer, and notify observer, and we have here method called set weather where we are changing the state of the weather and calling this notify observer method. Next we have this concrete observer class phone display which implements observer, and here we have a variable called weather, and then we have this update method. Then here we are giving the implementation for the update method because it is implementing this observer interface, and this interface has method defined called update. And then we have this private display method that is getting called inside update, so this will display the change in the weather state. So similarly we have another concrete observer TV display which again gives the implementation for the update, and display method is defined here which will display the change of state. So this is how we are going to implement this weather state. So now let's move to the driving code where I have the main method, and we'll see that when I execute this program it is working as expected or not. So let's see what I'm doing in the main method is that I'm creating an object of the weather station, and then creating an object of this both the observers which is nothing but phone display and TV display, and weather station has a method called add observer. So we are adding this both the observers to the weather station. So whenever there is a change in the weather state, so that weather station should be able to notify to all the observers. So there are two observers here, one is phone display and TV display. Let's say tomorrow you want to notify to some other observers, you can create a separate class about that observers and again create an object here and add it to the weather station without modifying a single line of code of your existing code. So now let's see, we are changing the state of the weather here. So weather station is saying that the state of the weather had been changed to sunny. So let me execute this code, and let's see it is notifying to both the observer or not. So here you see I got the message that in both the observer, one is phone display and TV display, that weather updated to sunny. So it is notifying to all the observers. Now let me comment this. I'll change the weather state to now rainy, so I should be getting that message again. So here you see when the state of the weather is changed, it is notifying all the observers which are subscribing to this weather station. So this is working as expected. So tomorrow if the state of the weather is changed or any new observer comes, you can add it to the weather station list and you can play around. It will notify to all the observers. So this is the implementation of the observer design pattern, and I hope that you are now clear with the observer design pattern and how to implement this observer design pattern. If still you have any confusion or any doubt, let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.